Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischl. This is going to be episode 176 of my poker vlog. For this one, I travel all the way to Tampa, Florida to play at the Seminole Hard Rock. Florida recently legalized live craps and roulettes, so the room was packed. Before I get in the hands, one quick announcement. My Club GG is now running tournaments, a $10 1K guaranteed on Monday, 15 1.5K on Wednesday, and a $25 tournament on Friday. These tournaments are consistently getting overlays. The one on Monday had just 79 total entries where 100 would be minimum to cover the guarantee, so definitely an overlay there. Over a $500 overlay on Friday. I plan on streaming the $10 one next Monday, so if you have any interest in playing any of those, message me on Instagram or Telegram. Happy to get you that information. Otherwise, let's roll the tape. So we arrive at the Seminole Hard Rock in Tampa, Florida. When we come to a location we've not been to in a while, we pull out the drone to get these awesome aerial views. Man, this is so beautiful. I should pull out the drone more often. As I make my way to the poker room, I see the craps tables are popping. Live craps and roulette recently being legalized in Florida, leaving these crappy mechanical games completely empty. But as we descend down to the bowels of the Tampa Seminole Casino to the poker room, we are greeted with our first hand of note. With a button straddle, the small blind limps for $10. I'm in the big blind with Queen Jack of Hearts. I raise to $40. On this hand, the +2 player decides to 3-bet to $120.
Personal foul, 69, offense. He was giving them the business.
And this had been after like the first lap of the table where like 5 of the hands were straight walks. This hand is probably too weak against what I would perceive of a tighter than normal 3-betting range. So I let it go and we start the session losing our first hand. For the next interesting hand, I look down at pocket jacks. From under the gun, I raise to $20. On this hand, the +1 button and the big blind decide to call, so that means we're going 4 ways to a flop of ace, 10, deuce, all spades.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
I don't have a jack of spades, which is somewhat concerning. And as mentioned before, this table had been pretty tight. Table just opened, not really expecting 3 different players all to not have an ace or a spade. So I put this into my check, somewhat give up mode. When I check, +1 bets $30. If it folds to me, I'll probably peel one, but the big blind decides to continue, so that will lead me out of there. But for the rest of the hand, the turn is the 7 of spades. Would have been awesome if I had jacks with a spade, but I did not. Goes check, check, river 8, goes check, check again, and the big blind had ace 5 with the 5 of spades. So suppose there were some creative lines I could have taken to steal this one away with just a 5 high flush being the winner, but we chose a more passive, straightforward line on this one. Alright, time to win a hand. We are under the gun again, this time with pocket 7s of the black variety. We raised to $20. The cutoff 3-bets us to $60. Alright, he's 3-bet us a lot so far. Not ideal. When the big blind calls to $60, I think I'm getting a good price to set mine. 6s and 7s are one of the best 3-bet calling candidates you have. You unblock all the potential 3-bet bluffs, and when you flop a set, it's pretty easy to play these hands. When we go 3 ways to the flop, I do not flop a set. However, 9, 8, 6 with 2 spades is about as good as you could hope for without flopping a set. I check it to the pre-flop 3-better, who checks it back. Alright, hoping to hit a 10 or a 5, that would make this hand extremely easy. However, a queen of hearts makes it quite difficult. This could interact with either of the opponent's ranges, but when the big blind checks to me, I'm just gonna hope the cutoff doesn't have exactly ace queen or pocket queens. So I assemble a bet and put $85 in the middle. Love to get the betting lead. Love to win the hand right now. All my opponent's misses should just fold. I can get called by any 2 spades as well, which I'm technically ahead of. So thinking that this is a good spot to bet. 85 will be the price. The cutoff folds, but then the small blind decides to call. Alright, at least I get to play this hand in position. Dealer, can I get an offsuit 5 one time? Well, 10 of spades. I guess we'll take that one too. At this point, spades beat us. The dummy end of the straight means that a single jack beats us as well. My opponent could easily just have jack 10, have me crushed. Opponent could theoretically have queen jack, just check and flow, turn top pair, but not feel great about it. Go into a check call. So when my opponent checks to me, I don't really think there's too many worse hands that can pay off a river bet. We have what I would consider right on the brink between marginal and premium made hands. So I choose to check this one back. My opponent has pocket kings. This is definitely one of those hands that I would have targeted if I went for a river bet, hopefully to pay it off, but again, he just called a 3-bet with kings, so we can't really put him on overpairs all too often. And additionally, if he does choose to 4-bet this hand pre, we never get to see a river with 7s anyway. So we will take it. We take down our first win at the Tampa Seminole Hard Rock. Happy to see it, and it's a decent sized pot. Next noteworthy hand, I'm in the small blind with Jack 9 of spades. A middle position player raises to $20. The button calls, that gives me pretty good odds, so I'll play the Jack 9 suited from out of position. We are 3 ways to a flop, which comes Queen 4 Deuce Rainbow. We do have a spade draw. We have backdoor straight draw. I wouldn't say we have enough backdoor equity to call a bet from our opponents, but when it checks through, we feel great about throwing out a bluff attempt if we turn any equity at all. But we turned the Jack of clubs, so it's not necessarily equity as much as showdown value. Now I think my hand functions pretty good as a just check call down. Give my opponent the opportunity to bluff with like ace king, ace 10, pocket 9s, pocket 10s, things such as that. When I check, the preflop aggressor bets $25, turning a pair of jacks. I'm not going to fold here. I make the call. And the river is the 3 of clubs. So now my opponent somehow had ace 5 or turned backdoor clubs. That got there. But he assembles a bet of $55. With this opponent specifically, I just kind of got the vibes that he had the ability to bluff. He just seemed competent and somewhat balanced. And when I beat a ton of bluffs here, like ace king, ace 10, 10, 9, although I blocked those, and I beat some value of middling pocket pairs and maybe like ace 4, ace 3 at some frequency. So I made the call for $55, and my opponent has pocket queens. So absolutely not a bluff, and I think he played it very well. I think queens is definitely a hand that's a good check on the flop, give your opponents a chance to catch up, like the way I did, and get 2 bets out of someone who would have just folded to a flop bet. Next hand of note. I have pocket 10s in the hijack. With a button straddle, the big blind raises to $40. There are 2 calls, what gets to me. This would be a pretty good squeeze spot, but I think if you're squeezing, you have to go at least 180, maybe even 200 if you're going to try to get any folds out of this one. I also think it's fine to just go for a set mine, play in relative position. When choosing to call, I think it's pretty good with my position, as other players who want to squeeze are now going to have to go like 250, 300, the more calls that are in there. But that is unnecessary because when I call, cutoff calls, and the button calls. So we end up going 6 ways to a flop. Please, dealer, give me a set. 8-7 deuce rainbow? Okay, we have an overpair, somewhat unexpected. Hard to keep an overpair with 10s. Checks to the preflop aggressor, he checks all the way to me. I suppose people are going to miss this board a lot of the time. No one behind me should really have jacks plus, and my hand kind of needs a lot of protection against all the many overcards that are available. So I throw a bet of $110. Can reevaluate on the turn when called. Can bet a second street on a 9, 7, 10, sometimes a jack, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. 110 will be the sizing. Cutoff folds, button folds, big blind folds. The last player's being extra sticky, but he eventually lets it go too. So 10's definitely made an above average pot when you're only risking 40. Definitely like the result of this hand, maybe less so the way I played it, but a win is a win. Next interesting hand. I'm in middle position with Queen Jack of clubs. I raised to $20. To this bet, the cutoff, button, and big blind decide to call. So we end up going 4 ways to a flop of ace, ace, 3 with 2 clubs. I have all the best aces in range, but any of these 3 opponents can have a weak ace that's just never folding. And I think with my flush draw, I have a ton of actual equity that I don't want to get raised off of if I throw out a bet and an ace just decides to play an aggressive route with it. It's a long way of me saying when the big blind checks, I check as well. Cutoff and button decide to check. So we get to see a free turn card, which we bink the nut flush when the king of clubs hits.
Nice work, Bone Daddy.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's always fun. Have a royal draw, but Not sure how often we're going to need it when no one bets on this board. Even though the board's paired, we do have a very strong flush. I bet $35. Cutoff folds, button decides to call, hoping for a blank card or the 10 of clubs. Either would be fine. River is the 5 of diamonds. I would say this is not a blank in general. I think my opponent has ace 5 specifically more often than some other hands. 6, 7, 8, 9, and a queen all would have been some safer river cards. A lot less full houses possible with those ones. But we are still going to bet here. We have the nut flush. My opponent can have a weakly played ace. Maybe he turned a king and he just won't give up. Also, all the weaker flushes, 6, 7, 8, 9, all that are just going to pay off a bet. May even raise. So I throw out a sizing of $75 on this river, hoping it at least prices in a king at some frequency. But my opponent folds pretty quickly. I announce royal as I show my hand because I thought it'd be funny, and the whole table gasps for a second, but quickly realize I'm kidding, and we move on to the last hand of note. What better way to end a session than looking down at pocket aces?
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
When the hijack raises to 20 and there's 2 callers, I'm in the big blind, and I have aces. We are definitely raising this one. The sizing I choose is $130. I think this is relatively correct. Feel free to comment below if this sizing needs to be bigger or smaller. Want to thin the field, get this to heads up. It might not happen as the preflop aggressor calls pretty quickly. If he calls, I think that entices everyone else to, but the button and the small blind get out of the way. So we are heads up to a flop. We have aces. We're out of position. Flop comes queen 8 deuce with 2 spades. Holding the ace of spades, I don't think I need to bet here 100% frequency. If I had like the ace of clubs and the ace of hearts, I would bet here knowing I can get value from the ace high flush draw a lot of the time. But knowing that my opponent is severely limited on flushes that are possible, I choose to check this one to him, see what he wants to do. He checks it back. At this point, I rule out a lot of queens. A lot of pocket pairs. Maybe he just has some suited connectors that are of the lower variety, not of spades that completely whiffed. When the turn is the 5 of hearts, we double block both flush draws, so we're not super concerned. We don't think we need to go for max protection with this bet. And we don't even think our opponent has a pair of queens all too often. So we want to bet a little under half pot, somewhat small, get him to pay me with maybe 10-9, Jack 10, gut shots, and maybe some backdoor heart draws. To my $100 bet, my opponent very quickly calls. It's usually indicative of a draw. So when the river is the 5 of spades, I choose to check to my opponent. I don't really expect running 5s to be relevant too often. Front door spades got there. I check to my opponent thinking he has complete air a lot of the time and giving him a chance to bluff with all those full misses. And he bets $100. I'm actually not happy to see that sizing. I was hoping for like 300, so it's more bluff central. This is more value heavy, so I'm not folding, but now I'm thinking I might be beat. When I make the call, my opponent shows pocket 9s. Well, I can beat that, I guess. So we finished the night taking down a decent sized pot. Suppose it could have been bigger with some different betting lines taken, but don't think there is too much extra value to be made aces into 9s. So we begin our journey out of the casino. Long walk because we parked in the wrong garage, down many hallways of slot machines. We get to see some fun shops and memorabilia on the way out before we finally make it to the car and begin our long drive home. With this hand, we finish up into the game for $800, out of the game for $14.08, which is a profit of $608 across 3 hours, equates to $202 an hour, or 40 big blinds an hour. Yeah, I'll be the first one to admit that I think I played a little bit too passive this day, a little bit scared money, aces into 9s, possibly get more there, possibly need to go for a bet when pocket 7s make a straight, although a flush and a higher straight are possible there, so that one's pretty close, but maybe I will take more aggressive lines in the future. My next video will be at Seminole Coconut Creek, so be on the lookout for that, and I will see you on the next one.